Hi, so here we are. I'm Stepan, my co-host is Pavel, and there was one podcast we haven't aired yet. That was a podcast where Pavel decided to interview yours truly. So now let's proceed with the older episode.
A friend of mine recently bought a 3D printer and decided he wants to make money with it. And I told him, you don't have time. You have a work, you have a wife, you have a kid, you have a hobby. You don't have time for it. And his answer was, well, it prints it. It stands there and prints everything. I don't have to do anything.
Yeah, not true.
Perhaps you could explain for those people who've never dealt with it that it's not just printing, that it does take a lot of time and labor.
Yeah, it definitely takes a lot of time. I just watched a really nice video, which is pretty similar to your question and to this topic. A person talks about his experience with CNC woodworking. And he also got a question. It's like, it's machine just cutting wood. You don't need to do anything. Why do you charge so much money for the items you produce? But then it's like you have to prepare the design. If that's something standard, you just you already have the design, but you may need to make some tweaks. But then, okay, you need to start the process of printing. It takes several minutes. Then, of course, it prints. And when the tool is printed, you need to take it away and maybe to do some finishing work, because sometimes the prints are not ideal, or sometimes you need to remove some parts of the item because of the object, because otherwise it can't be printed, or because of its geometry or something. And then it can take this finishing work can take something. It can take 5 minutes. It can take an hour, depending on the type of the tool. And then you need to pack it. And for the smallest tools, I don't know, like corner cutting jigs, you spend 5 to 10 minutes on packing, because it's just how it is. And then when you have like 50 orders like that, it's 10 times 50, so it's quite a lot of time. And the problem with these larger tools like sewing frames and book presses and book scanning frames is that packing takes a lot of time, because you want to pack it properly so it doesn't break on its way. And it's usually large boxes, so it's harder to operate. And packing can take an hour or something, and it's an hour of your time. And even if it's your hobby, I have to account for this time. I have to sort of calculate the price of this time. And in the end, if I do that at 11 p.m., it takes away my rest and my health. So you need to find this balance. And this April and May, it was really hard for me to find this balance. And I definitely would say any person who thinks that 3D printer works on its own and you do not need to do anything and it just makes money, that's definitely not true, because there is a lot of this processing work you need to do. And sometimes it can take hours.
Is there any hope that better printers will save you more time, that you won't have to do as much post-processing as you do now?
Well, not only hope, I can see that with every new printer I buy, I try to have a chance to improve the processes in some way. So I still keep myself within the limits of so-called cheap printers. So everything below $1,000 or €1,000. And my most expensive printer is something like 800, 700 or €800. And it's more expensive because it's so huge. It can print objects of 40 by 40 by 40 centimeters inside. And that's really useful when I print, for example, papermaking molds or something like that. But otherwise, the last two printers I bought, they print with much more precision than the older ones. So I get cleaner prints, and I almost never have to do any post-processing with these printers. So I save a lot of time. I save a lot of my efforts, and that's really good. And yeah, I already know which two new printers I will buy this autumn, and all reviews supposedly show that they will improve my processes even more and make the work even easier.
Okay, so I was wondering, assuming among our listeners are people who want to start their career in what you do, who want to print things to sell, what kind of 3D printer would you recommend?
Well, I'm not sure I'd like to recommend something. I can name the models of the printers I have in my workshop at the moment, and there are definitely many reviews on YouTube and many sort of professional 3D printing YouTubers who review all these new and old printers, and I guess that's the best source of information, because for every type of project and operation, there are different printers that that will suit better. And the other important thing is budget, because it's really hard to give any advice about buying a 3D printer without knowing which budget you prefer. Because if you have 100 euros or dollars, then it's really hard to advise anything, recommend anything. There are some options, but I'm not sure if it's a proper thing to start business with a $100 printer. If you have a bit more, there are some good printers, good cheap printers, so you will still need to do a lot of work and a lot of fine tuning. If you have something like $1,000, there are more options. You can buy more printers, more cheaper printers, or you can buy one or two more expensive printers. If you have $5,000, it's absolutely different situation. So it's really hard to give any advice. The only advice I can give is that you should check some YouTube reviews and make your choice depending on the recommendations of these professional 3D printing people from YouTube.
What works best for you? Which
Okay.
model is good for what you do?
So for me, it was an incremental process. I started with the cheapest printers. My first printers were under $200 or something like that. And then gradually I started to buy more expensive printers. Well, my latest printers were not the most expensive ones in this cheap 3D printers niche. They were something like 500 euros per printer or something like that. It's still expensive for many hobbies, but it's not as expensive as it could get. So it was a gradual process, and I started with something cheap because I wanted to understand how it works in general. Then when I understood how it works, I knew better what do I need from 3D printers. So I also watch these reviews on YouTube, but more often than not, I understand that I follow the reasoning of the person who is reviewing the printer, and I can disagree with them because they have their own projects in mind, and I have my own projects in mind. And for my projects, something they don't like would be okay, and something they like would be completely ruinous or something. So, but now I'm almost at the point where I'm almost ready to buy much more expensive machinery just to save my time on repairs and servicing the machines.
And the difference is mainly in how much you need to fiddle with it, or is it the technological process? I mean, how detailed the printing is. Because one would assume that for the tools you make, you don't need that much of precision.
For me, the problem is post-processing, when you need to send some superficial parts of the tools or something, and remove some parts that are used as supports or something like that. With some 3D printers, it's easier to avoid these menial tasks and to save time and to save effort. So for cheaper printers, you can definitely make a good working machine that will give you fine quality with cheaper machine. But cheaper machines means that it needs more tweaking and more time. You need to spend more time on tweaking and on tuning and on repairing the machine afterwards. So with every next month, I understand that I have less and less time for tweaking and repairing, and I want to my machines to be more stable and to work better for longer periods of time. And that doesn't mean that I'm ready to buy printers that I don't know, cost thousands of dollars. But I'm really at this point when cheaper printers are not a solution, because they are taking too much of my time, especially when there are like 5, 10, 15 printers in your workshop.
And I assume you need ever bigger printers because you make bigger things now. You said your most recent printer can make things up to 40 by 40 centimeters.
Not the most recent. It was my third printer or something. So I went big almost right from the beginning. But yeah, my latest printers are smaller, but still larger than the first some of the first printers. And yeah, size is important, but with size come different limitations. They heat longer, because a larger printing plate takes longer to heat up, and so you spend more time on printing, and the precision may drop with larger frames. So yeah, there are some things you need to keep in mind when you are buying a larger printer. I want to buy even larger printer because I want to print paper making molds for A3 size of paper, and it's more than 40 by 40.
Yeah.
So at the moment I cannot print this size, and so I want to buy a 50 by 50 printer.
And in terms of speed?
Well, yeah, more expensive printers can print faster. It's not like the difference between $200 printer and $1,000 printer. It's the difference between all these printers under $1,000 and printers that cost many thousands of dollars, 5, 10, 15, and then more.
And what kind of speed ups are we talking about? Is it twice the speed, 4 times the speed? How fast are they going?
I'm not sure, because I didn't really check, because I don't have this kind of money, and yeah, it's depending on the part of the tool I'm printing. It's from 20 millimeters per second to 70, and most of my printers can print up to something like 100 millimeters per second, but quality drops with increasing the speed. And there are tweaks that you can do to make it better. You can start the frame for the printer and lower different sorts of vibrations with better coolers or with better supports and all that stuff. But I know that there are printers that can print like something like 200, 300 millimeters per second. And so yeah, it's much more faster with the same quality, and they're much more expensive. And yeah, but for me, it's not really a problem, because it's cheaper for me to buy one more printer and to have more printers printing simultaneously. And it's not as important for me to print faster.
And I assume you don't have to worry about competitors, because to this day, as far as I know, you're the only one who's making 3D printed bookbinding tools.
No, not the only one. There are several of them, and some of them have pretty similar designs. Yeah, there are some other.
But surely not everything you do no longer unique. Paper molds,
Yeah.
And book scanning rig you mentioned. Are those still unique?
I know of people who are printing paper molds, but I don't know anyone who is selling them. And what I think is the main advantage of 3D printed paper making mold is that well, first it's cheaper than traditional paper making molds, at least for larger sizes, and then it's much easier and once again cheaper to make watermarks with these molds. So that's the main advantage, and of course you can make lots of different patterns for the paper itself. Like there are traditional wolf pattern and lathe pattern of paper. When you have this, lines. When you have light, you can see that there are lines in the paper. Lines are created by the wires of the mesh, or there is a wolf paper when there are sort of square holes. So it's a fine mesh that you almost wouldn't see it. But with 3D printing, you can make all these different funky types of meshes, like this Japanese wave, and it looks really nice in paper when you print cast a paper like this. And that's the other advantage of 3D printed paper making molds. And I didn't see anyone doing that yet. And I would have hoped that there was more interest in such tools, because I think it's a very creative tool that allows for a lot of experimentation and making a lot of strange and interesting things. But I have a steady flow of orders for paper making molds, but not as much as I thought. Just from my geeky point of view.
Wondering, does the innovation come from you, or do you get specific orders like, I want this strange wireframe, or I want this watermark, I want this strange design, I want this shape of paper press mold? I mean, how does that work?
Well, definitely there is a lot of innovation that's coming from me, because I love to experiment. I love to improve my tools. Almost all of my tools pass through. You are a programmer, you know how it works. So some of my products were passed through dozens of versions. So, for example, my book scanning frame, you mentioned it before, it's now in version 4.2. Corner cutting jigs, they're version 1.8. I name all these versions. I have all the backups. I have all the older versions, so I can go through the history of the tools for each one of them. And I like this process, and I use most of these tools all the time. So when I see that something can be improved, I do that. So for most of the tools my customers order today, they are at least a bit different from the tools they ordered a year ago. But at the same time, there is some input from customers, from my followers on Instagram and other social networks. Sometimes they just throw some ideas to me, like, it would be interesting if you could do something like that. Sometimes they ask for something specific, like they make an order and ask me to make some modifications. In some cases, I make these modifications for free. If I feel that it's a good modification, I can save for future versions of this tool. In some cases, I ask for some additional money to cover the time that is needed for the development, because designing takes time.
So perhaps you could give some examples of the kind of input you get from your customers. What was modified? What was useful?
So one of the colleagues that gives me a lot of different inputs, and we discuss my tools a lot with her, and she tests some of my tools. Is Eliana Gomez, who was one of the previous guests, bookbinder from Brazilian Dutch bookbinder from Haarlem. This is punching cradles for making holes in sections for sewing, and it allows you to make holes in all the sections precisely at the same positions. This is not my invention. This is a tool that existed for quite a long time. It was traditionally made with wood, but the important improvements that I made is that this tool now has numbered holes. So you can have records of for different projects, and if you need to replicate your project, you always know which stations you used for sewing this or that book. And for many bookbinders, it appears to be quite useful. This modification was sort of inspired by a customer, because one of my customers asked me if I can make some pins that he can use to cover the holes that are not used for his current project. And I thought, what can be better than pins? Okay, numbers. I improved the tool that was designed several months before. And I see the reviews, I see the comments from customers and from followers that many bookbinders find this improvement very useful. So Eliana saw this tool, and she told me, okay, I'm working on a very large book that is something like 50 centimeters tall. So I need a different tool. I need a larger tool for this book. And we had a discussion about how to improve this punching cradle. After the discussions, I came out with a larger tool, which has a different angle. So it's 120-degree angle, not 90-degree angle. So it would be less tension for pages when they lie down in this. And it was larger. And the larger size at the moment is 60 centimeter long for 60 centimeter long books. And this one is printed as a puzzle, because I can't print longer tools on my printers, and I have to print them in parts. But then, so it's a multi-step process, as you can see. But then there was an order from a person from Italy, and she ordered a lot. And one of the things she ordered was the punching cradle. And I wrote her, you made a larger order, so I can send your tools in a parcel, so I don't need to print this tool in parts. And she replied me that it's better for her to have it in parts, because she plans to move the tool between her studio and her home workshop, and it's better for her to have a chance to disassemble it. And then I understood that my initial idea that tools can be printed in puzzle, as a puzzle and then glued together by a customer when they receive them can be improved. So now for all the modern versions of this tool, I have them printed with a hole that has a thread in it. So you can thread a screw inside, and you can assemble it, screw it, and it's perfectly fixed, and it wouldn't move. And then when you have used it and finished your project, you unscrew it and you can fold it, and it takes less space, and you can take it with you anywhere else. So yeah, it's a process of constant improvement, and all these improvements happened in time frame of half year or something. And I think that's the most enjoyable part of this process of my work for me, because I'll have to improve the tools and to experiment with the ideas. So yeah.
Speaking of improvement, you mentioned another project that took a lot of stages, and which I find to be one of the most exciting of your productions, is the book scanning rig. Tell us
Yeah.
tell me how it came about and how it improved and how it evolved over time.
So it didn't come from a client, this idea, and I even didn't plan to sell it in the beginning. So I wanted to have some contraption to scan books easier, because I wanted to share some of the books from my collection with my followers or with my patrons on Patreon, and I needed some more efficient way than flat scanners or something like that. And of course, the basic idea for this book scanning cradle isn't new. I didn't invent it. I think maybe I improved on it in some ways, but yeah, it's just a cradle with a with the top part that flattens the pages of the books, and then there is an arm that allows you to. I guess I will better show it. So initially, the cradle was partially 3D printed, and it had wooden elements, but it was not stable enough. And pretty soon, I understood that it's much better and easier to make cradles with plexiglass. And the top parts were also made with glass initially, not with plexiglass, because I thought it will be better for some reasons. But then I understood that there is a huge chance of glass breaking, and it's much easier and safer to work with plexiglass. But at the same moment, plexiglass, it's clear enough for scanning. So I moved to plexiglass for both for cradle and for the top part. As I think, one of the main improvements with this book scanning system compared to all the other systems I saw on the web is that you can use your smartphone, not a professional camera, for scanning books. And modern smartphones give pretty nice images. And there is a version of this frame, this system for larger cameras as well. And it's a bit more expensive, but you can use your smartphone. And almost all of the books I digitized and shared with patrons on Patreon were scanned with my smartphones, and the quality is quite impressive. And for using smartphones, I print these cases. So for each client, with every new order, I ask the client which smartphones do they use, and I print bespoke phone cases for using with this frame. And yeah, I will just use it right now. Of course, you need much better lighting than this one, but yeah, I usually I have a different setup because now the top lights are preventing the nice picture, but in general
that's precisely what I was wondering about. Plexiglass, one would think, would give glare, doesn't it?
No, not really. First, there are anti-reflective types of plexiglass, and this one is exactly like that. It's just you need to, in any way, with any scanning contraption, you need to prepare your lights properly. So it's not only because of plexiglass or glass. There are problems not only with plexiglass. Glass also can be reflective, and there is non-reflective glass, but it still reflects some light. So in any case, you need to have a proper setup. I usually place my lamps in the following the axis of the fold of the book. So I have lights in sort of two focal points. The light is shed nicely on the surface of the top part of the book scanning frame, and there is no reflection.
Okay, maybe you could show us your studio, your tools, your books.
Yeah. Okay. One more thing I wanted to show. So this is the what's called the large size of the book scanning frame, and it's not the largest size. So I make them even larger for larger books. And this is, I think that's the medium size, so it can be smaller.
It's so cute.
Yeah, and that's important because if you put a smaller book on a larger frame, it will take a smaller part of your camera's frame, and this means that final resolution will be lower. But if you put your phone on a smaller frame, the page will take up almost all of the frame of the camera's frame, and the resolution will be higher. So different sizes of frames for different sizes of books. And one of the options is that I also sell the top parts separately. So you can order one cradle and use different top parts with the same cradle. And that allows to save you on parts. And yeah, so where should we go? To the books or to 3D printers and workbenches?
Let's start with 3D printers.
With 3D printers, okay. So it's a bit messy here. So these are the one on the right is my second printer, which I'm trying to redesign for printing with paper pulp. So here is the piston. And in the bottle, there should be a paper pulp, and I have all these hoses and all that stuff to connect all the parts, but I haven't finalized the design yet. These are waiting to be repaired. These are multicolor printers. And here are two of my printers, the smallest one and the medium one. And yeah, something is have been printed recently. It's a corner clamp for box making for miniature boxes. And that's something I've been experimenting with. So that's the part that was printed, and I wanted to have. So this is how larger corner clamps look when they are stored. So there are lots of them, and I wanted to find some better solution for storing them. And so yeah, I designed this part that will allow to stack them and easily take them away. And then, well, they use similar things in shops and stores everywhere. So, or like vending machines. So that's my recent design. I just finalized yesterday. And yeah, next we will go a lot of boxes because I'm packing orders all the time. And by the way, here is my oldest printer, the smallest one, and it doesn't work anymore. And it sort of it cost me $100, and I need to spend something like 150 euro to repair it. So I'm not sure I will ever do this. And this one is printing right now. So it's printing corner cutting jigs. Something like how many of them at the same moment? 16, I think. And yeah. And this one is the largest one. So it's 40 by 40 by 40. And I turned it off for now because it's one of the loudest of them all. So I turned some of the printers when we're recording podcasts, so the noise wouldn't bother us.
Have you ever printed anything this big? It's enough for a self-portrait.
I know that people are printing, cosplayers are printing helmets and something like that, and you definitely can print a helmet, the whole helmet within this space. But I think I either use the surface, so when I print something like, I can show you that. I have some papermaking molds that are waiting to be packed, and yeah, that's the decal, that outside part that keeps the water pulp inside the frame. And here are the frames. So they are pretty large. And here is this late pattern we talked about.
Yeah.
You can see it, and there are several of them.
For something this intricate, you couldn't possibly print it in pieces and then combine them. It needs to be printed in one piece.
Yeah, I thought for this pattern, I guess I can print it in parts and then glue together. But still, it's a lot of work, and I wanted to experiment on that, but I still haven't found time for that, and maybe later. But it's simply that it's much cheaper to buy a large printer than to have all this work done. So the problem is not only that you have to spend time on designing, you have to spend time, the computer has to spend time on calculating all the things. And it takes not so much time for simpler things like corner cutting jigs or gauges or punching cradles or something like that. But when you have meshes like this one, it takes enormous amount of time for the computer to calculate the mesh. I use Fusion 360, and the problem is that it only uses one core, so it doesn't matter if your CPU has 4, 8, 16 cores. It will just it only depends on the clock of the processor. So you can buy the fastest processor, but I guess that's what I'm going to do next year. And I upgraded last year, and now I understand that I'm almost there to justify buying the most advanced processor that's available at this time, because I need to calculate all these meshes, and it takes huge amount of time. And by the way, this mesh is not as insane as the one I showed you before. So this one, Japanese wave mesh, it takes, I don't know, for this small size, it took me an hour it took PC an hour to calculate this mesh.
That is insane. Something is wrong.
Absolutely. So sometimes you need to make some modifications to the design, and then this calculation process starts from the beginning, and it takes an hour more. And at the same time, you cannot do any other designs because your PC is overburdened with these calculations, and yeah. So that's returning to your previous question about what you need to keep in mind if you want to design and 3D print some things. Sometimes it takes a lot of time.
And there are no alternatives to this software. So basically,
well,
it's easier to upgrade your hardware than it is to find an alternative.
Well, yeah, there are alternatives. There is cloud computing, but it's expensive, and for these types of projects, it's expensive. So yeah, it looks like I don't have any alternatives than just sometimes waiting an hour or two for the object to be calculated.
This is insane, and do explain that to me. I mean, this mesh looks very, very, very repetitive. Why can't you just calculate a part of it and then clone it?
Yeah. That's how I design them. That's the process of designing the larger sizes of meshes. I make smaller part, and then I replicate it until it's of the size I need. I have a sort of basic programmer's education. You have much better programmer's education. But as far as I understand it, these types of 3D designing programs work in a way that the calculation process is very linear. So there is some model, and the software, it's every time you make any changes, it goes through all the processes you've been doing to all the changes you've been doing to the design right from the beginning. Because this process is so linear, that's the reason they use only one core. So sometimes it's frustrating that it takes so much time, But for smaller objects, it's not really a problem because it takes like a fraction of minutes or several seconds.
Okay, let's move on to your tools. Show us your tools.
Which ones? Which tools do you mean?
Bookbinding tools, maybe.
Okay, I guess I will go to my Workbench. By the way, this is the first Workbench, and this Workbench came with me from Moscow, and this is one of the tools I made myself. I had 4 workbenches in my Moscow workshop, and 2 of them are here with me, and 2 I decided to leave in Moscow, and I don't know, I gave them away or I sold them. So the first one was I use it mostly for my 3D printers, and this one is for both for bookbinding and woodworking. So yeah, I have this ugly thing over there because in the recent weeks I was doing a lot of woodworking, and to save our living room from all this wood dust, I made a curtain. This is my main working area, and yeah, I guess I will show you how I store some of my stuff. This is, by the way, I also 3D printed these rails. I started with this one with these ones when I bought this set of type cases, and nowadays I use them for smaller thingies. So here are corner cutting jigs. Here are bolts for punching cradles. There are also keys for sewing frames in different colors and sizes, and also the corner cutting jigs are also in different colors, as you can see, and different types. So there is angled one. There are these ones that don't have a wall. Some people like it like that. There is larger wall if you want to feel safer. There is a lower wall if you are, yeah, just for everybody else. So all the different types and sizes, smaller for thinner cardboard, thicker for thicker cardboard, and yeah, this one is almost empty. I had some, yeah, I do not need to show it. And here I also have some stuff for scanning frames. And what else?
Sorry, what you just showed us, this is what, your stock, or are these your tools? Are they?
So yeah.
Yeah. Why so many, in other words?
Yeah, that's my stock, and this mostly covers 1 month's sales or something like that. So if I wouldn't print anything in a month, I would run out of this. And just a few days ago, it was almost empty because I was spending so much time printing different things, and so I didn't print corner cutting jigs almost didn't print them at all. So the box was almost empty, and I had to start printing them fast.
What are those things that are on the wall to the left of you?
Yeah, there are clamps. And by the way, I wanted to. This is a tip I wanted to share because I've been looking for a place to keep all my clamps so that they wouldn't get in the way. And after living in this apartment, in this house for 1 year, I decided that I can use this beam for the clamps. But in the beginning, I was placing them only on one side. And you cannot really place them closer together, much closer together, because then you can tighten it, because it's you need to have some space for your hand. And only many months later, I realized that I can put them from two sides. And then there is a lot of space for hands, and you can place twice as many clamps in on the same beam. So yeah, just a bit. Okay, here are some of my weights I use, and some more, and even more. And my favorite iron.
Are these all found objects, or is it from flea markets?
Everything came from flea markets or thrift stores or something like that. And I just love buying old stuff on flea markets. Yeah, another iron, by the way, I didn't notice it somehow. Yeah, I have many irons. And by the way, another hint, I use a lot of weights from dumbbells. Yeah, all the different weights, different sizes, and I use them since I don't know when. So yeah, mostly I do woodworking these days. I almost never do any bookbinding projects just because I do not have any time. I need to fulfill all the orders, and it takes all my working and all my free time, really.
And what woodworking projects are you working on?
So the latest, I think I have it here. By the way, that's another catch from a thrift store, this cabinet, and I bought it for something like 25 euros. And when I bought it, I didn't even know where would I place it and what would I fit in it. And then I came home and I have all these boxes for screws, and it fits perfectly. And I don't know, maybe it even was built for that type of because it's a very simple plywood cabinet, and yeah, I was so happy it fits. So, for example, this is one of the almost finished projects that I had to send some time ago. That's the project that still isn't past deadline. So it should be a press and a sewing frame at the same time. So here is the base that will serve, and here is the top. And then if I take some screws and put them in here, and the plank over here, it will become a sewing frame. So it can be used as a press or as a sewing frame. And it's almost finished. I just need to glue the plates together and sand it, and yeah, treat the surface with oil, and it will be ready for shipping. That's another one. That's a sewing frame. That's almost it's finished. It just needs to be packed, and I have to pack it before the end of the week because I promised the customer that I will send it soon. And it's one of the overdue projects, one of the overdue orders that was delayed because of problems with the materials.
How much of your time do you spend now woodworking, and how much of your time do you spend 3D printing?
Recently, I placed all of the wooden tools out of stock in my shop because I just don't have this time anymore for woodworking. And the first reason was that I had these problems with the delivery of materials, and there are still some problems here in the Netherlands with the delivery of materials. At least with the shops I use. Maybe there are other options, I just don't know about them. And so at the current moment, you cannot buy any wooden tools from iBookBinding. So now I'm sort of at the summit point. At least that's how I feel it, because I fulfilled almost all the orders that were backlogged. I processed almost all of the new orders, not within this 2-3 week time frame, but usually within 3 to 5 days, and that feels much more like a proper, work process for me. And I think for some time I will just keep this like it is, because I want to have some rest and to forget the work nightmares of April and May. And at the same time, I'm looking for a woodworker who will take at least part of the work from me, because I can do some finishing and assemble the final tool, but cutting to sizes, drilling all the slots and holes, I'd prefer somebody else to do it for me. And I think even when we finally move to United States, that will be the way I will proceed from that point on, because it's just this business starts to be bigger than something that one person can do in 7 days and 24 hours.
This was fun. I am finally prepared to demote you back to a host, because it was definitely a promotion. Sorry, but you are better guest than you're a host. So thank you very much. Stepan, you've been a wonderful guest. Proceed.
Yeah, thank you, Pavel, for having me and for being with me for all this time. And we're moving to the final phase of our podcast. I'd like to say thanks to all of our patrons on Patreon. There were several new subscriptions in the past weeks, and you will find names of all these wonderful people on the end screen of this video. Many thanks to all of them and to all of the previous patrons who continue to support iBookBinding. And you can also become our patron if you'd like to.
Bye.
Bye. Thanks a lot. See you next week.